Hello and welcome to Just with Jessica. This video is in continuation of my previous video where I mentioned that in the next series of video we will be talking about the skills that are much required in the different organizations or different institution, and in that we will be inviting other lot of professionals and academicians who can just provide us the insights about what kind of skills are now very important rather than just you having a degree from a very renowned institution. So in this series, we have invited Miss Meenu Joseph. She is currently a regional head of corporate affairs and public policy in Ola, and she did her bachelor's in Mount Carmel College, and later on she did her master's from National Law School of India, and she started her career as a junior associate in Indian Political Action Committee, that is known as IPAC. And later on she worked for 3 years in this organization. I'll also link down all the organizations that I have mentioned so that you can just get the idea of what these organizations do, and maybe you can also apply for that. And currently that I mentioned, she is working in Ola as a head of South India. So in this video we basically discussed about what are the relevant skill set that people can have so that they can get an edge over people who have the degree of very renowned colleges like the IIT, IIM or national law schools, right? Because there are a number of students who are from tier 2 and tier 3 colleges, and sometimes most of the students think that they lack in this area. So in this video we discuss the skill set, what are the requirements of the industry and how everything is changing, and what are the lessons that she learned throughout her journey, what are the mistakes she have done, or what kind of advices she will give to herself as a, when she was just starting her profession. So it was a very insightful discussion where we covered all of the points. So if you're interested, you can just watch the whole video. It's a quite long video, but yeah, I am very sure that it will be very insightful for you in case you are in your graduation, or you are just starting your career, or you are a young professional. So keep watching the video. Hi and welcome to Just with Jessica, Miss Meenu. Thank you so much, first of all, for being here on our platform despite having a very busy schedule. We are very grateful to have you here, and we are really looking forward to listen to your insights and your suggestions from your career that you have learned. And I look forward to a very good conversation that can help a lot of people. So before starting this conversation, I would just love to hear from your side, your introduction, so that people can get to know you, what you have done and what you have been doing.
So thanks, Jessica. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your platform. And it's been great to know how you've started the work and how you're trying to reach out to professionals who are working in the space. So I'm really happy that I could be part of your page as well. So my name is Meenu. I am a public policy professional. Currently, I am working with Ola, the Ola Mobility Wing, and I'm the regional head for policy in South India. So that's my current work profile. But just to give a very short background about myself, I finished my bachelor's in 2014. I did my BA in triple majors. It was political science, economics, and journalism. So just around that time was when public policy as a sphere of education was picking in India. So one of my professors had showed me an ad that National Law School Bangalore had put out for calling out applications for the newly launched course, Masters in Public Policy. So that's when I kind of joined, and the written test and interview and things like that. So I joined the MPP program in 2014. I passed out from law school in the year 2016, and it's been almost 7 years into my career now. I started off being a political consultant because I think in the initial part of my career, as well as a young kid, I was really interested in politics. And I think in that decade, there was a lot of churn in how election campaigns were working. Just the way how elections were conducted in India had changed quite a bit in the early part of the last decade. So I thought it's an interesting time to kind of get into that space, see how things run. So I joined a political consulting firm called Indian Political Action Committee. I was working with them in their state elections in UP, Uttarakhand, uh, as well as Punjab. And Jessica, I think I've lost your video. I don't know if it's my connection.
No, I think you can keep on speaking. It will just manage.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Uh, so yeah, I was saying, okay, awesome. So I was just saying that I was working with IPAC. I was part of one of their election cycles where I was working in UP, Uttarakhand, as well as Punjab. So that point of time, my work revolved around research. I was part of the research team, which was working behind the scenes in, putting out research papers, studying constituencies, figuring out which candidate suits best for a particular constituency, figuring out what campaign ideas you need to work on the ground, etc. So that was majorly my work profile in the first year of my career. So in 2017, one election cycle got over, and I had a good flavor of how things work on the ground. And that's when I decided that, I've kind of understood how things work in the background, how elections work, how are leaders elected, what works in an election, what doesn't work in an election, all of those kind of things. But my role was more or less into research, right? So, which was very interesting at that point of time for me. But I also wanted to make the shift and kind of get into the implementation space. I really wanted to see how things work on the ground, where I can be working with teams to make sure that I directly work with people or the government and see how things work. So I kind of took a year's break, and there I started off doing two projects. One, I was working with Center for Child and the Law, which is a research department within National Law School. And at that point of time, my focus of work was on the National Food Security Act, which was passed in the year 2013 by the Government of India. And we were doing a project with ICSSR to see how the NFSA Act has been working in select states in India. That was a very interesting opportunity where you were kind of seeing how, a policy was framed, but how was it really working on the ground? Simultaneously, along with this, I was also doing some teaching in my alma mater, which is Mount Carmel College, where I was taking a course for the students of MA in public policy. So after during this year's break, I had a chance to kind of study how the policy space is working, and that is when I figured out that That's when I got through a job with Indus Action, which calls itself Do Tank, which works in the space of policy implementation. I was leading the state of Kerala at that point of time, closely working with both the district as well as the state officials on a project on early childhood care and education, where we were working very closely with the local self government, the Anganwadis, etc. So that was an interesting time where I had a chance to work in the grassroots as well as, kind of see how schemes, etc., are designed at the state level. Of course, pandemic happened, and I think like everyone else, there was a lot of reshuffling for me as a professional, and I shifted my base back to Bangalore, and I was a part of the Karnataka state team at that point of time. Here also, we worked with the government on a couple of projects. One was to study how to increase the women's participation in MGNREGA in Karnataka, because Karnataka was one of the few states, one of the states in South India where women's participation was pretty low in MGNREGA. So I was part of the team which was doing a study on how we could increase the participation of women. This we had done along with the department here, and we're also working with the Karnataka Planning Department on a couple of their poverty elevation programs, which was concentrated on districts such as Raichur and Yadgir. So that was my time at Indus Action. I think in the early part of my career, for the first, I think 3 to 4 years, I was part of the social sector. Then I kind of, I think, realized that, I now want to explore further opportunities, and I, shifted to the corporate sector after having spent time in the social sector, understanding how things work. So that's when I shifted to Ola last year. I'm going to be finishing a year in a few days from now. And here I look into the regulations of the transportation sector. We work majorly because aggregator transportation mobility, or the system of platform aggregators, etc. It's something which India has now seen in the past decade, and now all states are looking at policies or regulations on how to regulate the players. So there's a lot of churn which is happening in South India. So that's when I've come into and started to work with Ola Mobility. So yeah, I think that was a long description, but yeah, that's how so far my career has been, Jessica.
Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful and a very insightful introduction to our audience. I really hope that your introduction itself would have helped them to know a lot about the organization which exist and the different kind of internships that they can apply for. Since you mentioned about the public policy, and this is an emerging field in India, though it has emerged in West, but a number of Indian organizations and Indian institutions and universities are coming up with a number of degree courses in public policy, and also there are other institutions who are coming up with short courses in public policy. So, you also being a part of this subject, I would love to ask this question from you, that do you really think that having a knowledge about this subject or having some kind of association or a degree with this subject can really help people to find better opportunities in all the emerging fields that and all the emerging requirements that people and institutions have for the young professionals and students?
Uh, so, speaking from my experience, I think one of the things that really helps if you're coming from a public policy background per se is the interdisciplinary nature of the course. I think what really helps when you are in a policy school is you get a flavor of all sectors. You also have a chance to specialize in a specific sector of your choice. Uh, so, say your research, your data skills, stakeholder management skills, working in the grassroots, as well as working directly with those who are framing policies, both the policy implementers as well as those, say, at the legislature level or at the cabinet level who are working. So you get a flavor of all these things very early on when you are in a policy school, which would be perhaps different from someone who is coming from an engineering background or an MBA background. So I think the intersectionality approach of the public policy courses in India, or in fact abroad, I think really helps you develop an understanding. So that definitely gives you a head start into the sector. So I think that, and these skills are very transferable, right? So if you look at my profile itself, I started off, say, in this political consulting space. Then I moved into very specific role within education, within food security, and now into the mobility space, etc. But what I've realized are these skills are very transferable across sectors, because I think the kind of skills that you actually develop in a policy school helps you work across sectors. Of course, once you get into the sector, you have to get into the niche of it, you have to understand the nuances of it, but these skills are extremely transferable. So that definitely helps, and I think that is something which I've seen, that where you stand out from, say, someone who comes from an engineering background, for example. But that said, I think policy in India, policy space in India is still a very, very heterogeneous space, like you correctly mentioned. I think, say, in my team, in my previous organizations, or right here, you have people who are coming from different backgrounds. You have your engineers, you have your lawyers, you have your MBA grads. So that's also the reality. It's as much as we bring in specific skills, but the point is that there are also people or professionals who are coming from different spheres of education who have found a space for themselves here.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. So, because we target generally the students who are in either their graduation or doing masters or young professionals, right? And having that kind of experience, vast experience of working in different organizations, have you observed any kind of loopholes that young professional or students have? I mean, the lack of skills or something that you would suggest that if people can start learning these skills at a very early stage, it can provide them an edge.
Right. See, in terms of skill set, I feel like uh, most of most of us come with uh, a specific skill set. Like you mentioned, if you are coming from a humanities background, you're very strong when it comes to the theory part of it, right? You really know what are the theories, right? How theories work. Say, if I'm just talking about political science, so I was a student of political science myself, so I knew exactly what are the theories, how does the Indian political system work, what has been our history, how have elections taken place, how are things working on the ground, what has been, the journey from say 1947 until now. All these things are we are very strong with theoretically. But I feel like sometimes what we really miss out on is, we have a very utopian idea about how things work when we are in our undergrad years. You really don't understand how things work in the grassroots. So, along with all the skills, I'm sure we talk about research, we talk about data. Data, of course, has taken a center stage now, right? I mean, as we are talking, we keep hearing news about how data can fast make sure that all of us go jobless in a few years from now. I think that's something which we keep hearing on a day to day basis. So, which is definitely scary for a professional who is just coming into the space, or even for professionals who are in the sector already. But I think along with all these, specific data skills that we talk about, or research, or all the other skills, I think what is really important in while you are in your undergrad is to make sure that you kind of soak in as much experience that comes in your way. You do a lot of internships, you do workshops, or like field immersions as much as possible. So that gives you a clear flavor of what really happens on the ground. And by ground, I just don't mean like, okay, you go to a field, you just, intern with an NGO, understand what's happening. I also mean, having different experiences. If you can possibly, if you are a political science student, or if you are a journalism student, etc., if you can actually intern with NGOs, if you can actually intern with media organizations, see what actually happens, in the background. If you could also, there's so many internships which now government departments are providing. If you could really go in there, right? Because we have a very different idea about how the government functions. It's not how literally how we read in the textbook. It's not point 1 2 3 4. There's actually so much which happens in the background. So I think if you kind of like get into that space, if you're able to understand how things work on the ground, and if that is juxtaposed with what you are learning in your classroom, I feel like that's a huge head start for you when you perhaps get into your, say, as a professional immediately after your undergraduation, or in fact even if you want to go ahead and do your master's program. I just feel like it helps you get into, what you want to specialize in very early part of your career. So that's what I feel.
You just provided us a glimpse of different organizations where you worked and what kind of work you have done and what kind of skills every different institution was requiring. So I really want to ask this question, that the students who are listening to us are majorly in their college, or they are just about to start their professional careers. So what kind of skills would you suggest that every student should have at their early stages, or what kind of skills can a student start to learn in their college or in early profession, so that it can help them to find better opportunities in the future?
In terms of skill set, I feel like uh, most of most of us come with uh, a specific skill set. Like you mentioned, if you are coming from a humanities background, you're very strong when it comes to the theory part of it, right? You really know what are the theories, right? How theories work. Say, if I'm just talking about political science, so I was a student of political science myself, so I knew exactly what are the theories, how does the Indian political system work, what has been our history, how have elections taken place, how are things working on the ground, what has been, the journey from say 1947 until now. All these things are we are very strong with theoretically, but I feel like sometimes what we really miss out on is, we have a very utopian idea about how things work when we are in our undergrad years. You really don't understand how things work in the grassroots. So, along with all the skills, I'm sure we talk about research, we talk about data. Data, of course, has taken a center stage now, right? I mean, as we are talking, we keep hearing news about how data can fast make sure that all of us go jobless in a few years from now. I think that's something which we keep hearing on a day to day basis. So, which is definitely scary for a professional who is just coming into the space, or even for professionals who are in the sector already. But I think along with all these, specific data skills that we talk about, or research, or all the other skills, I think what is really important in while you are in your undergrad is to make sure that you kind of soak in as much experience that comes in your way. You do a lot of internships, you do workshops, or like field immersions as much as possible. So that gives you a clear flavor of what really happens on the ground. And by ground, I just don't mean like, okay, you go to a field, you just intern with an NGO, understand what's happening. I also mean, having different experiences. If you can possibly, if you are a political science student, or if you are a journalism student, etc., if you can actually intern with NGOs, if you can actually intern with media organizations, see what actually happens, in the background. If you could also, there's so many internships which now government departments are providing. If you could really go in there, right? Because we have a very different idea about how the government functions. It's not how literally how we read in the textbook. It's not point 1 2 3 4. There's actually so much which happens in the background. So I think if you kind of like get into that space, if you're able to understand how things work on the ground, and if that is juxtaposed with what you are learning in your classroom, I feel like that's a huge head start for you when you perhaps get into your, say, as a professional immediately after your undergraduation, or in fact even if you want to go ahead and do your master's program. I just feel like it helps you get into, what you want to specialize in very early part of your career. So that's what I feel.
Yeah.
Since we started this channel, and the major motive of this channel is to cover up students from all the different colleges that is there. So basically, in terms of India, when we talk about colleges and universities, so here it's divided into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 colleges, and obviously students from the tier 1 colleges generally get the best placements, opportunities, and other kind of internship, and this is the harsh reality, right? So what happens generally is there are a number of students who are already in tier 2 and specifically tier 3 colleges that are in very very small cities, and they have a very limited opportunities and skill set, but obviously they want to thrive in their career too. So what kind of specific skill set would you just suggest to the students of tier 2 and tier 3 colleges, so that they can just bridge this gap, and they can just fulfill this lack of opportunities and skill set, and whatever problems they have with them? So what kind of skill set, specific skill set, would you suggest to these students who belong from such colleges?
Right. I mean, like you rightly pointed out, I think students who are coming from tier one colleges in India, or in fact, say students who immediately go after their 12th standard, who go abroad to pursue their education, certainly they have, you know, a, a head start into when they become a head start into their careers, right? Because they stand out from the crowd. I mean, just for example, the kind of placements they get. At the end of their course is very different from what a tier 2 college would get. So that itself is a differentiator right there. Of course it's not fair, but that's a reality, right? I mean, you have your top consulting firms coming into your college, you have your top NGOs coming in to hire you, or your different from just different spheres of the industry. You have different people just coming in, which might not be the opportunity, like you pointed out, for students who are coming from the tier 2 cities or tier 2 colleges. I feel like, we are talking about skill sets. We're talking about hard skills, right? We talk about our qualitative skills, quantitative skills, and I know that you would know that better than me, or in fact, the students these days would really know what they want to develop in. But I would say for sure that one skill which is really, really important, and that's something which I have understood over the course of my career, is networking. I think that's one skill which I think we don't speak a lot. We really focus, we are like, okay, if you develop your skills, if you are a disciplined student, if you work hard, you will make your way through. I mean, that is true. That's a very utopian view. But I think a skill which is really important is also networking. That's something within which I understood in the latter half of my career. And I feel that's something which students should really do. And there are plenty of internships, fellowships which are out there. And, there are different sectors that we focus on, right? Be it, say, your think tanks, be it your development consultancies, or you have so many chances to work with the government, or you have so many chances to work with leaders or MPs, MLAs, be part of their teams early on. There's so many internships out there for that. You have so many fellowships which you could actually join immediately after your undergrad. Some of the very famous fellowships in India continue to be, say, for example, your Teach for India fellowship, Gandhi fellowship. Now, if you have to specifically talk about policy, CMGG is something which has gathered a lot of attention. Now, a lot of state governments itself are coming with fellowship to directly work with them in different departments. I think Delhi has, takes in a cohort every year. I know for a fact that a lot of northeastern states are doing it. A lot of southern states are doing it. Andhra is doing it. Telangana is doing it. Tamil Nadu is doing it. Tamil Nadu is something I think we'll have to cross check, but I know for a fact Andhra. So a lot of states across India are now actually putting out fellowships for young professionals to come in. So that's a great opportunity there. So even if you're not able to, say, work with the top firms immediately after your graduation, these internships actually give you, or these internships or fellowships give you a real chance to work with the policy implementers right from the beginning. And that in the latter half of your career would be really helpful, right? Because that's the networking you do. Of course, your consulting firms, your corporate policy teams, like something which I am doing right now. There's so much opportunities out there for working with your grants and donors. Now, CSR fund is like, something which we speak or hear about so much. Now, there are actually opportunities to work with them. For example, your Rohini Nilekani Philanthropy, Azim Premji Foundation. There are real opportunities out there for students who actually want to pursue public affairs and policy communication is again a sector which is like really developing in the past few years. Now, communication is not something which just, say, the top companies are using in India, but that's something which even our governments are using so much in the past decade or so. Now, that is something which is of, I think, a huge career opportunity for students who are coming from the humanities background, monitoring and evaluation, etc. So, I mean, I just listed out, say, 10 sectors. So there are so many players who are working in this. So if you're able to just draw out a list, see where your skill sets can be of use for them, start networking very early on, do as many internships as possible along with your coursework. I feel like that would be of great help to the students. I don't know if that answers your question in detail. Yeah.
Till here, you provided us very beautiful and insightful suggestions to the audience who are listening, and what kind of skill set that student can have so that they can thrive in their careers and they can get better opportunities. I would like to ask this question to you now specifically, that what kind of advice would you love to give to your younger self who has just started her career and has just completed her education and now she's into this whole professional sphere and she's confused? Is she really confused, or is she really confident about what she has to do and what she is going to do and where she see herself in future upcoming years? So what kind of advice you would give to yourself, because this is going to help a lot of other people who have just who are just thinking of starting their career, or they are just into college, so it might help them a lot.
Right. No, interesting question, right? I mean, two questions which actually scare me is one, what advice would I have given my younger self? And the other question is, that standard question about where do you see yourself in 5 years from now? At least the second question really scares me, and I've never been able to give an answer to my future self. But at least to my younger self, this was something I was just having a discussion with one of my close friend who's also, who was also a part of the master's program from law school. So we were just discussing the other day, and we were just like, we wish we had some kind of mentorship early during while we were in our while we were doing our education, while we were doing our master's program, right? So for me, uh, I did my master's immediately after my graduation. So it was just like one of those cases where you're like, okay, policy program sounds interesting. Let me give this a shot. So I went in. To be very honest, I don't think I made a very reasoned out, it was not a very reasoned out approach where I exactly knew what I was doing. I was like, okay, let me see if I get through the entrance, if I get through the interview, then I'll take it on. But if I actually look at it, and then if I look at the experience which some of my classmates had, then I was the youngest in the class at that point of time. I was just a 20-year-old who was part of the program, and I had no understanding of the space. And then my classmates were all from, from different sectors, engineering backgrounds, journalism, law, business, etc., banking sectors, and they had a very clear idea about why they are here, what they want to specialize in, etc. At that point of time, I think I was just throwing stones in different directions and seeing which one kind of works for me, right? So I think what I would tell my younger self is perhaps choosing on some mentors for yourself very early on, someone who could just guide you. Like, say, for example, the kind of sectors which I just told you, I don't think I really knew about all of them. I didn't know these opportunities really existed uh, at that point of time. For me, it was very, very limited at that point of time about what I wanted to do. So I feel mentorship is something which I wish I had at that point of time, would have helped me make better decisions. And perhaps I wouldn't have had to do it in the latter half of my career. Second would be specialization. I think that's really important, especially when you are, say, in the second or the third year of your undergraduation program. Or it's important at that point of time to kind of understand, okay, what is my interest? Where do I fit in? Of course, at that point of time, you're too young to really know. But I think some aspect of it, if you could decide, I think that's really useful. And I think if I had done that during my master's program, where I could really decide, okay, this is going to be my specialization, I'm just going to be focusing on this sector and then grow. So I think that would be something which would have really helped. But setting aside, the careers and, say, the opportunities which are out there, how much you earn, where you are in life, I really wish I was just a little more kinder to my younger self and didn't have to put myself through so much pressure. I didn't have to be in that, pressure chamber all the time where I'm just like, what are you doing? Are you doing enough? I just wish that I was a little more kinder and I could take it, one day at a time, which perhaps I didn't do it at that point of time. I'm not too sure if I'm still doing it, but I just wish that if I had done that, perhaps I would have been a little more at ease and I could have peacefully found my way out then and not, had to pressurize myself. So, yeah.
So I think we have almost covered all the things that we wanted to discuss and the information that we wanted to pass on to the students and young professional. Obviously, there is a lot to talk about. There is a lot to learn from your career itself, and there is a lot of information you still have that you know that you can share to the students and other people that are listening to us. But I think we have limitation of time, and you have a very very busy schedule, but you still manage to take out some time for our discussion to provide all the insights that you have. But at the end, I really want to thank you a lot for taking out time for us and providing your insight, and I really look forward to have you here again to listen to more of your thoughts and your experiences. Till then, thank you so much, and I really wish you best of luck in your future, and I really hope that you find answer to your question of where do you see yourself in 5 years. Though most of us are still confused what we are going to do in the next week, but I really wish you all the best and a very beautiful and a very peaceful life. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you so much. And thank you once again for having me here. And good luck to all the students. And I'm sure it's just going to be fine. Let's not, like I said, put a lot of pressure on our younger self. I hope it just like irons out by itself and we will find our space eventually. Thank you. And good luck to you too, Jessica. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.